Hi, everyone. Welcome to another LTX Studio webinar. We are so excited to have our friends from Dynamo in the building. I'm excited for all of the things that I'm going to learn today. I don't know about y'all. I'm Malaysia Community Manager at LTX Studio, and even though I work for LTX, I'm always excited to learn from people who are using the product. So super excited to have Nick, Carl, Rebecca, Ryan on. We'll be able to chat with them a little bit more. But while we're waiting, I'm actually going to go ahead and launch a little poll. So I'm excited to learn more about the people who are currently on this call. So while we are waiting, you should have just seen a little quick check-in poll pop up on your end. Let me know in the chat if you do not see it. But I'm getting some answers. So assuming y'all are seeing it, what best describes you? There's so many people that are interested in AI right now, from filmmakers to creative teams that work at agencies to different studios, to people who are like, what is this AI thing? And they're just exploring. So I'd love to hear more from you all about where you are, what best describes you in your AI journey. And also, have you used LTX Studio before? I think the more that you all answer that, the more that we can kind of guide our conversation. So would love to hear those two things. And if you have been on Zoom like me for the last 6 years during the pandemic, you know I have to ask the question, where are you joining us from? I don't know when it turned into the obligatory question of Zoom. I'm based in New York right now. Nick and Rebecca, where are y'all based?
We're based in Tribeca, New York, also. So we're
Okay,
downtown
amazing.
Manhattan.
Same for you, Carl.
Same for me.
What about you, Ryan? Where are you based?
I am in Toronto.
Okay,
I'm
we
up
got
north.
some variety up in there. Cool. Well, I'll just let everyone know so we can kind of get a feel of who's in the room, and definitely feel free to keep answering this over the next couple of minutes. But it seems like the room is pretty evenly split. Right now, we have like 41% filmmakers here, which that's really exciting to hear. 27% production company, 20% agency, a little less, 17% brand. Some creative technologists are also here. And again, 25% of people are just exploring AI video. And very excited to see that 77% of people have used LTX Studio. So that will give you a lot of context as you get ready to dive in. So like I said already, I'm Malaysia Brown, Community Manager at LTX Studio, and I'm excited to welcome you to how Dynamo made a series using LTX Studio. Today's session is designed to answer a very practical question. What actually changes across the production workflow when AI is used from storyboarding to final output? This session focuses on how a real series was created using AI across the full production workflow. You'll see how the process comes together from early stage storyboarding through final output, what decisions were made along the way, and how AI fits into a modern production environment without compromising creative vision. To walk us through this, I'm excited to introduce Nick Carlson, CEO of Dynamo, alongside Ryan Patterson, co-founder and creative director at Queen One Studios, and Rebecca Harrington, chief of staff at Dynamo, and last but not least, Carl Mueller, Dynamo executive producer. We will have time at the end for Q&A, but I'll be keeping an eye out for questions throughout the conversation. That way I can start to stack my list for questions at the end. So feel free to drop questions into the chat as we go. And with that, I will hand it over to Nick to get us started.
Well, thank you. And actually, let me say, Alicia, thank you very much for hosting us and also to LTX. This is a great opportunity for us to talk about a show that we are really proud of. I'm glad some creatives are on this call to talk about the work they did because they did some really astounding stuff. And if there's one thing to take away from this conversation, it's that this work requires great creatives and they need great tools. And LTX is one of those. And so we're really excited to be here and talk about it. Our show was called The Rise of Civilization. It's called that because we saw the power of AI to do something that we've kind of always dreamed of being able to do, which is like take world-class historical experts and learn from them about how humanity got to where we are, some of the seedier stories from the past and also the sort of triumphant stories from the past, and really understand how we got to the civilization point where we are now. And of course, it's very difficult to do what we do with some of our shows and send a camera to the ancient world. So we, over really like listen, the technological rise here is incredible. It's been like a sudden one, and we're all grappling with it. But seeing the capabilities of platforms like LTX and others sort of come out of nowhere, really, in the past couple of years, and maybe even you might say the past few quarters. I mean, it has been an unbelievable change. We saw an opportunity to use these tools to bring to life stuff that you obviously can't go shoot with a camera. And so that's what the rise of civilization is about. And I think that Rebecca is about to show a clip that'll do an even better job of showing what the show is like. So over to you, Rebecca.
Thank you. All right, everybody can see that. I'm gonna go ahead and make it big and let's see what the show is all about.
It's 54 CE. It was 508 BC.
In the 6th century BCE, Persia started as a small cluster of communities.
Hidden among the stories of emperors and wars and the ruthless people, her story has been mythologized for 2,000 years.
This tyrant, considered to be one of the smartest men the world had ever seen, had used his reputation to slowly influence men and women.
This is the empire at its height.
Suddenly, the empress herself walks into the kitchen. Everyone bows, except the blonde.
When you think about early empires, you think about giant rivers that fueled them. The Persians had nothing like that.
Agrippina had reason to fear that she was heading towards a bloody end.
Persia needed a system that tied its farthest regions to a single center.
The new school he created was grounded in the belief that the universe and all things were created by numbers.
It was humans collectively working together to rise from the muck and form something great.
Oh, hey, I know that guy. Anyway, so that's the show. And so one of the people we worked with throughout this process is Ryan Patterson, and Ryan is just like a world-class animator. And I like to say world-class animator rather than AI animator or whatever, because it's what he's doing. He's making amazing animation using the latest tools. So Ryan's going to show us now a little bit more.
Yeah, thank you so much. Thanks for having me. Let me just first start by saying that this whole process has been so fun. Like this is so new. It's like 6 months sort of on the go, I guess for me, maybe about a year that I've been doing this. And by far my favorite part is, the creative aspect. And so working with Dynamo has been a lot of fun. There's nothing better than like as a creator being handed a script with a really cool show. And I just wanted to kind of show you like using LTX how we're able to like use that platform on the last two episodes that we did. So we have kind of like a roster of characters, and you did see some of those characters in the clip we just saw. So I wanted to show you some of how we did Locusta, this female poisoner, with this kind of fun cast of characters as well. So yeah, essentially, my God, I don't want to say LTX made it like super easy, but it did. You can start right from your storyboard. So again, some of the writers that we work with at Dynamo provided the storyboard and a shot list. And so I just want to run this through now. I'm going to do it like in real time. We've already done this, but I just want to show you sort of like how easy this can be. So we've got like a PDF of the script, right? And you can just punch that in. And if you look here, you can have your style. So we had already generated a few styles, a few looks for this. And when we kind of landed on one, we were able to generate some images. So I've added them here. And I'm just going to let this run. So it's going to run in the background. and it's going to pick apart the story. It's going to sort of storyboard a bit for us. Um, and let me just go over to, and I don't know if we can take questions as we're doing this, but anyone jump in. Um, I just want to start with elements. So this was a really fun part with Carl and the rest of the team, the writers. We came up with a look for the last two episodes of this show. So I just want to show you what we did here. So these are just the characters. You're literally, uploading your characters, and when you upload your script, it matches the character names to the script. So everything's sort of intelligently done. So I just want to show you what this looks like. I only used a single reference image for the characters. I think when we started earlier, I think just around March, we had started this process. I probably would have done a little bit more like on the character sheet end to get like a more of a full look at the characters. But in this case, because we were going for something a little more stripped down, it worked great with just like a single reference image. So this is our character Claudius. You could upload, I think, up to 10 images to kind of, give a better reference. And we didn't use voice, so I didn't use that option, but you can see that. And the same with all these other characters as well. Um, and there's our star Locusta there. Again, this is all part of this elements collection in LTX. And then you could do everything from locations, objects. So these are all reference images that are going to be pulled in when you're actually creating your images. So I just want to show you, let's see the storyboard, how it's going. It's working in the background there. So let me just go to the canvas, and I will just say that this wasn't as organized as I was working. This has been cleaned up for you all. So let me just kind of show you what this looks like. You can see we have like our script pieces here, and then, images. So this is just the opening scene that we did. And then again, because our approach was like, let's try to keep this as simple as possible. We really, as far as doing your prompts, and the models we used, we really tried to keep it simple. I think most of this was done through LTX using VO3 and Nano Banana. So, as everyone probably knows, Nano Banana is really good at, capturing an environment and letting you kind of work around that, adding characters or taking them out. Um, so, you can see kind of how these shots turned into video. Again, very simple. We wanted like slow. We wanted the story to kind of do the heavy lifting. So, you can sort of see, to be honest, the models are getting so good now that it was tricky to kind of strip it down into more simple animations. So while the prompts were simple, it took a while to get to a place where, we could figure out, okay, how do we animate this in a way that, tells a story and is visually interesting, but is also just very simple, because certain models love adding action and drama, but we wanted something like pretty simple. So um, anyway, it was, it all turned out fairly well. Character consistency was good as well. We had to kind of go in manually sometimes. Um, because we were dealing with faces and we wanted to do a kind of stripped down look. So there were times where, again, models wanted to like add detail. So, that was sort of a learning process. Um, and I just wanted to show sort of as far as elements go, hold on, give me a sec here, how powerful and how easy it is just to create certain shots. So, now, when I'm generating images, um, sorry, let me get these out of here. So essentially, once you have your characters, you have a whole cast of characters, you have a whole bunch of locations that you've created, you have objects, you can, the way that you prompt with elements is awesome. And this, again, this is all new. And it's just, it's so exciting for me. So I just want to show you. So let's just say Lacusta, who's our main character. Let's say Lacusta sitting on a bed in prison cell. So, your references are all there. There's other, using other platforms, I kind of find there's a very kind of manual process where you're constantly uploading different files. You're always like searching through your Finder to kind of get those references back in. So just being able to kind of call these things up quickly is really cool. So I'll just run that through. Um, let me see our storyboard here. And Alazia, let me know on time. Um,
Absolutely.
yeah.
You're doing great. It's
Okay.
1:16. You got time.
Gotcha. Gotcha. Okay, so storyboard's still running through. You can see here that it's already pulled from the script and it's sort of running your shots. And I will say, like, this, I find this is just a really good starting point. And like I said, once it starts kind of generating some starting images for you using tools like Nano Banana, and that sort of thing to kind of flesh out a scene based on kind of feedback, it makes this process fairly easy.
And a couple of questions,
Hmm.
Brian, and let me know if you'd rather wait or get to them
Yeah,
right
yeah.
now. So one of the questions is, were the characters generated in LTX or were they made separately and uploaded as an element?
Yeah, so they were uploaded separately. So
Mhm.
we tweaked those characters um, beforehand, and then they were just uploaded as separate elements. So that's 100% possible. Sometimes we wanted to bring in like a certain object that was as a reference. So we would from a
Um,
reference image, we'd recreate an object, and then again, you could bring that in, but you could do it all in LTX as well.
Gotcha. And then
Yeah.
one other question, did you edit the whole video on LTX or did you use other tools like Adobe Premiere or similar?
So in this case, it was sent to an editor, one of
Okay.
part of our team, and I'm assuming they use Premiere, but I'm not 100% sure on that.
Gotcha. And I know that we have a feature, if you look at the top right, the export
Hmm.
feature, and it really is
Hmm.
created for that purpose of exporting and editing in whatever software works best for you. So
Yeah.
also wanted to note that.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, for sure. Anyway, I just wanted to like again show here this is a very basic shot here, but again, I think as far as like consistency goes and just the ease of getting kind of a starting image here. I know for this scene we had Lacusta moving around within in the prison cell. So um, again, just how quickly you can do that. It might seem basic to, some people watching, but I just find this whole process exciting and like kind of crazy and a bit magical still. I hope that doesn't wear off anytime soon. So I wanted to show this shot because I really loved kind of how this turned out. This was stitched together with Kling actually. So we use their sort of beginning and end frame just to show the characters as they may exist in a sort of modern museum. But again, like the sky's the limit as far as creativity goes on these shows. I don't think there's like a problem that, we had that we couldn't solve or, a creative approach that we, couldn't at least take a good stab at and get fairly far at. So, these tools are advancing so quickly and, as a storyteller, I feel so like lucky that, we get to use a lot of these tools right now. Let me go back over here. Yeah, so there you go. Hold on a sec. I'm trying to find the rest of these shots. No, no, I don't believe. I'm not sure why I can't see the rest of the shots here. Maybe I didn't generate it yet. Oh, there we go. I think I missed a button there. But anyway, I don't know if there's any other questions or, Lazy, if there's anything else
Yeah,
you want to know about the process.
I'm
Hmm.
actually answering one right now. Ken mentioned, give an LTX support statement about character elements. How would you be able to reference them by name? And so when you are generating from text to image, once you save them as an element, you can use the @ symbol in order to reference the character by name. We are working on that feature being available in image to video, but right now it is available when you are turning text into images.
I will interject briefly and say that the script that Ryan uploaded is 20 pages and about 5,000 words. So the fact that LTX generated that already from what we could see is incredible in my mind. I love the storyboard feature. It's like so
Yeah.
cool to see it come to life.
Yeah. You can see it happening there in the background. Um, Again, I think like you can see here, so it didn't take our image reference there in that example. So, those are the kinds of things you want to tweak, but I think for us it was about getting that scene, getting the outline of the scene and then working within it. There's always tweaks. Whether it's like, a first revision or, something you need to change just based on the edit, by getting close to the end of the project. This is just gives you like just a jump start on an entire project. So I just want to see. And yeah, again, just things like, being able to like generate video very quickly with like all these models, and like I see C Dance is now in there, which I don't think it was when we first started that project too. But again, like could I have used VO2 for this project? I'm not sure, perhaps, again, because I think the animations were that, we wanted them that simple that we could have even gone that route. Um, and different, as we know, different models are great for different approaches on a shot. So, again, having all these options here has been great. And like I said before, I don't think we did audio within these shots. Everything was sort of generated after the edit came together. So
And also, what I'm going to do for the sake of everyone is also drop the link to our Discord. Myself, along with Discord moderators that specialize in studio and our model, are there for the most part 24, I'll say 24/5. They're there pretty often answering any questions that you all have. So I see a lot of questions coming in through the chat. We're going to try and get to them. But if we do not reach every single one of them, we have moderators and then also myself. I'm present in the Discord where we are also there to answer your questions.
yeah, let me know. I think, from our end, this was a really good process, kind of going back and forth. Just these, I would say with these new tools, it's an ongoing workflow process, figuring out, okay, what is the best way to do this? Because, these are the first projects happening in this way. So, I think anyone who's kind of lucky enough to use these tools, credits can be expensive. So, kind of approaching this like in a professional way, it's it's just a lot of fun and it's a learning process. And I think like as the models are getting better, it's your time, like your generation time, the amount of shots you have to redo is kind of like coming down and down. So yeah, it's very exciting.
Fantastic. Alicia, I think should we move to the panel portion and maybe you can jump in with questions from the group if you feel like there's any that are particularly pertinent, and we'll back, excuse me, we'll get back to them towards the end of the program as well, if that makes sense
Let's
to you.
let's do it.
Okay, great. Okay, cool. Well, I'm just going to briefly ask our team some questions and kind of open up the conversation a little bit, and we will absolutely return to some of the audience's great questions. It's kind of the
Yeah.
best. So really for the team, when was it that you kind of felt like LTX could actually hold up as a professional platform, that you were like, oh, this is actually going to really help me? What was that moment where it seems like in a professional production environment, this was the tool that was going to be really, really helpful for you? We'll go with
I'm
Ryan and Rebecca.
happy to answer that.
Yeah.
I think it's this idea that anyone, can come up with a character, a story, right? And I think for Dynamo, I think the Rise of Civilization has kind of pivoted more to like, okay, let's tell the stories of these people. I think, again, that getting just that creative sort of jump start, so bringing in all your characters, all your elements, and then dropping a script in, and then how quickly that happens, because, I think there are tight deadlines on this stuff, right? And I think maybe like a year ago or even like 6 months ago, it was just much a slower process. So the fact that you can, start with someone's written a script, and then you get your characters, and then you're already kind of off to the races. Like this is totally new. This is not how quickly things moved in the past. So I think it's that just efficiency. It's fun, for a creator to like just jump in, and then we can have these conversations about, okay, well, where are we going from here? How's it looking? Is the animation working, or do we want to pivot? So we kind of had those conversations, quite often, and we were able to really quickly change our direction.
Yeah, absolutely. Rebecca, anything for you stand out?
Yeah, I mean, I mentioned how obsessed I am with the storyboard feature because, it's one thing to be looking at a script with so many words and you're trying to picture how will this become a video, and some people's brains are better at that than others. And being able to just toss that into LTX and then it just shows you what it could look like is so helpful for me to just see it all laid out, and like I can see, close to the finished product of what this can become. And that helps you as a storyteller too, because then you can see, okay, is the flow working? Like, do we need to rearrange things? How is this landing once it turns into what's going to be a video? And it's so cool to see how quickly it does it.
I think practitioners and people who are involved in the production of this uh, new art form, I would say, which can be sort of applied in all kinds of ways, are definitely learning that audiences have varying reactions to seeing AI generated animation. And so, you know, I would like to hear from Carl and Ryan about sort of how have you seen audiences react, and kind of what do you think it means for people who are in this profession and how we should be thinking about what we do.
Cool. Yeah. I'll say, like anything new, I think people are going to be a little hesitant to embrace it, especially something like this. And I think we've all seen those comments where people get creeped out, people are calling it slop. There's this kind of like what's the word that I'm looking for? The eerie sort of, is this real? Is this not real?
Uncanny Valley
The
things.
uncanny valley thing. And I think that's, I think there will always be those sort of comments. But the biggest thing that I learned, and as a filmmaker and as someone who's devoted the last, 15 years of my life to the craft, I think the biggest thing that I realized working with Ryan and this team is that it does take a lot of skill, and it takes a lot of creativity, even using a platform like LTX. It's like the more creative you are using this platform, the more that you use the skills that you've trained your life for, the better your video is going to stand out, right? So it's like it is a craft. It really surprised me at how and I'm kind of I've turned over. I was one of those people that was hesitant to embrace AI, and now I've seeing how much work went into it. And the final product, it's really, really impressive to me. And it is such a skill set, and I think it's only going to grow as an industry.
Ryan, I'm particularly interested, I mean, you said you sort of started your business in this, focusing it on this about a year ago.
Mhm.
How is the perception changing and evolving over time and kind of where is it, what do you think about it?
Yeah, I mean, I think the pressure in some sense falls on the creators, companies that are kind of embracing AI. There is a pressure to create amazing stories, right? Like things that you can't deny that the tech the way that technology is being used in this case is just in service of a good story. And so, I think working on these episodes, we've have like, some of the best writers in the world, right? You've got an amazing team, like all the humans involved in the process. And again, like you said, there's so much work that goes into this that you're not just pushing a button. And so I think the bar is just going to get higher. Um, People are just going to expect a lot. And I think creatively, I think that's, it's a worthy cause to kind of fight for. Like let's raise the bar for storytelling and visually, let's see where we can go. But yeah, I mean, I've already seen that more and more people are beginning to kind of love what's possible with AI. So I hope that continues.
Yeah, absolutely. One of my favorite stats is to say that Jurassic Park had about 6 minutes of CGI in it. And, we think of it as this giant breakthrough film, at least I do from my childhood. And, that film cost hundreds of millions of dollars to make. But what was cool about CGI then is that it allowed a filmmaker like Steven Spielberg to bring dinosaurs to life, right? And so here we are, um, able to do like so much more than even he was able to do ever. And so, Ryan, for you, I want to know, like, tell me about some of the creative risks that you've been able to take because of AI and really push it.
Mhm. You know, I I'm not the flashy I'm not the flashy person in the AI world. I know a lot of them. It's like
Yeah.
I see people are sort of like some people focus on the story, some people love the visual effects, right? And I think people are going to kind of go in those routes. I think for me, I've kind of found working sort of in a bit of the ad space a little bit is I think a lot of those ideas that were just wild for a 30-second ad, people are now dusting off those old ideas and they want to see if these things can work now because a lot of the ad stuff I've been doing is in pre-production. So we can right away we can tell, okay, are these beats landing? Is this too out there? Is it too complicated? Right? We have all these conversations, but I think that the ad space is interesting to look at with AI because you want that maximum impact in a short amount of time. So like visually, like how can we assault the eyeballs of a lot of people and is it making sense? So I'm seeing again people who are great at have had these crazy ideas in the advertising space now tackling them. I mean, for me, I find that so exciting. And I see where this is not, you're not just pulling stuff out of a model. You're coming up with an idea and making the model work for you. And I think that's like the exciting part is that we're introducing, all this new content with the help of these models, to kind of sort of supercharge what's already happening out there. So that's what I'm kind of seeing. I'm excited about.
Yeah, I mean, from my perspective, just to answer my own question a little bit, I mean, it is that ability to, if you can imagine it, you can try it, you
Yeah.
know, and you can bring things forward that we had this early on. We used it to bring to life um, imagery of this oil platform for the 1930s, right?
Mm.
And there was some archival stills of this thing, but there were no helicopter shots or drone shots. Neither thing were invented back then, but we were able to get a shot, basically a helicopter shot of this like oil platform from 100 years ago into a video using AI, and it's just kind of incredible. It's like dust off your Super Bowl commercials basically, and like you can even like be wrong. That's kind of the
Yeah.
you can kind of be wrong for a bit. Um, The you've talked a little bit about this already. Carl, I mean, weigh in on that one if you had
Yeah,
anything.
yeah. I just wanted to say, like, my fun example is one of my favorite movies of all time is Waterloo. If anyone's seen this movie, it's this 1970 something movie, and it's famous for the biggest battle scene in movie history with 15,000 extras. And this movie cost, I don't know, 70 million to make. Um, and so it's really fun to think about, oh, I can just kind of create that on my own using this platform. And we kind of did. We had this scene in this episode about the rise of Persia, and we had to talk about this battle where Persian cataphracts, which are armored horses, the first armored horses go into battle against Roman legions, and we were able to bring that to life using AI, right? And it's like I would have had to ask Nick for a $10 million budget, 3,000 extras, and dozens of drones, and something that we could do, and it's really cool to see that to life. The other thing that I love about AI too is that I see a lot of channels that are using historical documents, kind of like what Nick talked about too, using historical documents or images or paintings to bring the past to life with kind of like a source, right? So there's videos of like New York City reimagined using AI in the 1600s or something like that. And you can really go into the city and walk the streets. And so I think there's ways to use it which people will really, really embrace. Um, and it's fun. I watch these videos myself. So yeah, it's if as a filmmaker, it gives you a lot of creativity and a lot of options.
Yeah.
Jordan, I don't mean to interrupt. Did you have more to say about that? Or?
I just had one example, just again
Oh,
bringing the
right.
past to life. Sorry, no worries. Um, it, on a show we were working on, we wanted to, um, it was sort of behind the scenes of an old sitcom and a black and white sitcom. And we wanted to show the cameras they used, like these really large, like sitcom cameras. And the only reference we had was this very grainy, tiny, like the smallest file size. I can't remember, but you could barely even see it. But we actually were able to, with the help of, I don't know, ChatGPT or something, sort of describe it and super accurately bring it to life. So, I think like again, bringing these things back to life, like that was the only reference we had for that. Which is surprising, but it really was that model that they used. So anyway, again, just nerding out. I love this stuff.
We have a question here, Alicia. I'm going to just fire this one off if you
Go
don't
for
mind.
it.
Yeah, great. And because it's one I wanted to talk about, which is character consistency. It's a huge challenge with AI video. And Jordan Harvey asks, did cross-shot consistency for character likeness impact your design choices for the character style? You mentioned the models lost Jordan's question there. But anyway, talk a little bit about the character consistency challenges, Ryan, and how LTX helped out.
For sure. Yeah, I think again, like bringing them in as elements certainly helped. Having like style references as well. So just bringing in characters that look the same. That's I think that approach is different from what I've seen on different platforms. So in that sense, LTX helped a lot. Like there's always going to be some manual work. I know people get really excited about agents and, helping out to do all that work, but there's always going to be a human in the loop. Um, fingers crossed. Um, I think that yeah, I think it's just you have to keep your expectations like in check on this stuff. Like no, nothing's going to provide a perfect solution, but I think like I said before, it gives you that basis for character consistency and, it was like minimal. Like we did go back maybe on the certain shots here and there just because there was too much detail. It was like I don't know, I laugh, but like me and Carl talk about these like mouths. Like we didn't want them to have mouths, but it's like, well, we have some like eating scenes here. Okay, how do we approach that? So, again, you just have to be a little bit nimble and flexible on how you approach this stuff. But consistency didn't feel like a huge issue, I don't think, on this stuff. So it was, yeah, it was good as like again, this is all of a new process. So.
You're addressing one thing which I think we've kind of touched on, but which is that the human in the loop. It's kind of, in our work with artists like Ryan, you're working with people who are artists, and it's we also obviously work with cinematographers all the time, and they're also artists. And like, I guess what I'm trying to say is, people who might be attending this panel might be kind of wondering, and is this a profession and industry for me that's growing and things like that? And I would just say there's going to be real demand for people who can use tools like LTX to make amazing things. And you're going to have to bring to bear your sensibilities, your skill, your storytelling brain throughout that process. I'm sure, Ryan, you would agree. And Carl, you worked with people like Ryan, so why don't you kind of jump in with that too? Would you, someone was like, hey, is this a career for me? What would you say to them?
Oh, totally. Totally. I think one of the comments earlier was regarding like prompting camera movement and that sort of thing. And yes, I think these platforms can do a good job of that, but you have to have a really good understanding of like filmmaking, screenwriting, the whole
Right.
process to really make the best stuff possible, you know?
Give me a crane shot on
Right.
tracks and,
Put on a dolly.
exactly.
Yeah.
It's interesting to think about all like the language because knowing the language of filmmaking helps prompt AI quite a bit, as you all probably all know. Let's see. Do we have any other? I have another question here.
We have
Um,
a couple of other
oh, good.
questions.
Yeah, fire away, Leisha.
One
Let's
in
answer.
particular that I'm really excited about, but I wonder what the condensed response would look like to this, Ryan, because I know that we could really get into a lot of detail. But at a high level, Bianca asked, can you explain the step-by-step process to create the series? First, the script, then the creation of the characters was on LTX using Nano Banana 2, or did you create them on Gemini and import them to LTX? Then what happened next? And let me just preface by saying I'm asking this question live because I think a lot of people have all of these amazing ideas, and then they jump into studio and they're like, whoa, so many buttons. What do they mean? I always tell people to reference our blog and our Instagram because there's so many short but intentional tutorials that really make this a little bit less scary. But I'm going to drop the question here, Ryan, in case you want to reference it. But yeah, like what does it look like to jump in and create this?
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I would also
Well,
say Carl
yeah.
should take on some of this question too, just from like because there is working with others too that I think is an important part of the step along the way. But Ryan, go for it, and then Carl
Sure.
fill in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, Nick. No, I was gonna say before too, like learning to collaborate with this new process is a whole other thing, that we could get into. And like I know LTX has some like collaboration built into, which is great. I think just to break it down, the way that I work is just like very simple. I try to keep it as simple as possible. I'm not like try not to be too flashy. My prompts are very simple, but the process for this show, at least from my perspective, was here's a script. Um, okay, so we took the script, we looked at it, we went through, okay, yeah, we can do this. And then we basically fleshed out, what the characters would look like. So we designed the look, and then we designed the characters and the locations. So we had all that. And then essentially what we did was we just went through the shot list and we started with stills. Um, you could start with animation because it's fairly quick to get to that stage, but we thought, okay, let's do stills to start. And so we just storyboarded the whole thing. You could ask ChatGPT to create a storyboard for you. Um, but we already had our shot list. And then once we had approved the shots, we animated the shots and then went back and forth on that revision process. So, on this idea of like, yeah, you're right. Like it can be overwhelming. There's a lot of options, there's a lot of choices, but I think in that process, again, there was, what, like three or four of us kind of on the day to day going back and forth. That process seemed to work really well. And, again, from my end, it went to an editor to kind of put it all together. So
Carl,
again,
why don't you tell,
yeah.
I was going to say, Carl, why don't you tell the story of how a Rise of Civilization episode, maybe Locusta
Yeah,
went from, yeah.
if anyone here is a filmmaker or a journalist who's made a movie or a YouTube video, it's not all that different, right? You start with, we have a pitch meeting, we get a topic we like, we write an outline, we write a script, and we worked with actually some really great script writers. And one of them was actually a comic book writer, which I think really helped translate to AI video. So yeah, all of that pre-production is the same thing. And then essentially Ryan Patterson is like our DP, cinematographer, filmmaker. He basically he would go out and shoot, and then we'd
Mm.
see what he'd brought. And if we wanted anything changed or had ideas on how to fix it, we'd toss it back to him. He'd give us another draft. And it's like, like imagine doing that with a DP who just got back from a field shoot, being like, I don't like the color there. Can you go back and set up that whole shoot again? It's like, no, he can just go back to LTX and fix it, right? Which was definitely an easier process, at least on my end. And then Ryan did his magic, went to edit, done. So not that far off from traditional filmmaking.
You mentioned something that I think would be helpful for anybody in this room who's kind of like hiring teams to build to tell great stories with tools like with LTX. Um, we worked with all kinds of people. We made a bunch of episodes with this, and early on we kind of had traditional journalist writers doing some of our scripts and things like that, and we kind of realized they're the wrong type of people to make scripts for this show and really work with AI. What you need is a little bit what we talked about before. Someone who understands storyboarding, filmmaking, camera angles, what you can do with a camera, because what you can do with a camera is kind of the metaphor for how you use these sorts of things. So we hired um in my prior job, I had this wonderful experience of winning a Pulitzer Prize for a comic book. And we hired the writer of that comic book named Anthony Del Cole to write a story for us for The Rise of Civilization. He did an episode. And Anthony was the perfect person to hire because if you've ever read a comic script, it's a lot like a film script where there's dialogue, of course, but then kind of in brackets or in italics sometimes there's camera directions and like, what's supposed to be in the frame and what's supposed to be happening in the frame and that sort of thing. So the writer you need for these kinds of projects is someone who pictures basically a comic or a movie in their head. And then one of the other people we worked with is I'm suddenly, oh my goodness, I'm going to blank on his name, but he's a noted Dylan
Dylan
Banks.
Banks.
Yes, that's right. And he made the documentary Get Me Roger Stone, which was kind of a big deal. And he's a filmmaker through and through, also like a classic writer director type. And so, you have to, there is this perception out there that, and I know everyone watching this knows it's not like this, that you can kind of vibe code a video by like holding up your phone and be like, I want a video about Locusta from, whatever. And it's not how it works. You actually need really talented professionals to make these tools really sing. People like Brian, but also different writers in the pipeline, basically, in the process. Um, let's see. Are there any good questions that we should address, Alicia,
Let's see. There are a couple. I have a list that I'm collecting. Someone else asked, and I don't know if we answered this or not, but I'm gonna surface it just in case we didn't. Did you use more filmmaking terms when communicating camera motion in a prompt? Like, for instance, would you say dolly in? Or did you find there was a more effective way to communicate camera motion in a prompt?
Yeah. So again, that was where it was helpful to have, filmmakers, storyboard artists, comic artists approach it because they already had a sense of, okay, what could be the camera movements here. A lot of part of it, what we were working on, some of the tricky part was like, we want to freeze these shots. So so in that sense, we wanted the scene to be frozen, but we did want that motion. So yeah, we were using, again, traditional camera movements depending on the shot. So, just orbiting, like a high orbiting shot, a lot of push in, just slow push in, just enough to give, to keep the scene sort of interesting. Um, But yeah, yes, the short answer, yes. Yeah.
Absolutely. And I was going to add, like we've mentioned 1,000 times throughout this is for the novice as well. So there have been so many times, and by the novice, I'm referencing myself. And so there have been so many times where I'm creating something and I'm like, I want to set up a shot that's scary. I'll Google what type of camera motion is usually used to create a sense of fear or worry. And so again, use the internet to your advantage for all of the little questions, quote unquote, little questions that you think you might have. That's it. Nick, you got one final question to wrap us up? Oh, you're muted.
Sorry, yeah, I just didn't want to cut off anybody else's jumping in there with a question. Um, I think that I just want to make sure I phrase it right. The I imagine anybody watching this is pretty much invested in figuring out these tools as best as possible. And so you've spent a good 51 minutes with us. And by the way, thank you very much for that amount of time. It's awesome. And would love to answer any more questions for you, but just really want to know from Rebecca and Carl and Ryan, what do you say to people who you think are interested in the space, but could use a little bit of nudge or encouragement to get into it and figuring out how to use tools like LTX in particular to integrate it into their workflows? What do you what's your message to them? Let's go, Rebecca, then Carl. Yeah.
Yeah, we'll do the increasingly expert level. So I'll start. Based on, yeah, so I don't have a filmmaking background, but I've been a journalist for a long time and have made lots of videos. And so when I jump into a tool like LTX, I don't have the same parlance. So I too am trying to figure out like what terminology to use. And it's totally fine to Google those things or to work with, another AI tool to figure out how to talk to AI. It's one of my favorite ways to write a prompt is like, what is the best way to phrase this? And I would say just like jump in and try it and see what you can do. Use our link, use our code, like try LTX today. You can try it with, for free, get started. And yeah, just see what you can do. And one of the coolest things I think for me about using LTX is like you saw in the dropdown when Ryan was sharing his screen how many different video models there are, right? So you could do all of those separately, or you could just go straight to LTX and like play around with the different, try VO3, try Seed Dance, like use all of the different tools and see which ones you like the best, which ones you vibe with, which ones can create the thing you're trying to make in your head. And just like try it, have fun. You can do it.
Carl.
Cool. Yeah, I will say that, this is the future of video. This is the future of filmmaking. So I think it's important that everyone at least tries and gets involved in this and gets better at it because you're going to have such an advantage as an early mover, being in this from the start. And I think the hate, I think it's kind of the loudest voices in the room. It's the minority, and I think that minority's decreasing. So, it's only a matter of time. So might as well get ahead of it and be a pioneer.
And then Ryan.
Sure. Carl just took my answer. It's like now is the time. If you have that idea, you have a story, we all do, and that's what I keep preaching. I just, go for it, dive in, fail fast. You can tell such a big story now. So just go for it. The tools are just going to keep getting better. So
Yeah,
that's it.
where I would just being a company that spends money on production resources, right? It's like there is definitely a profession here, and being creative with it. I think that one thing that's you can kind of see is our journey through Rise of Civilization is that one way to use this tool is to try to just be super realistic in everything you make. But another way to use the tool is to think of it as incredible animation that can do even more than you might think in terms of just trying to focus so much on realism. So don't it's like this permission to let your mind go wild and chase the most unbelievable things.
Yeah. And speaking of permission to let your mind run wild, also, I guess this will be the last question, Ryan, from the audience, permission to allow things to go wrong sometimes. Someone asked, and I think it was Ken, let me double check. Yep. Ken asked, on a scale of 1 to 10, how frustrated have you gotten when AI doesn't do what you want, even when you prompt at your very best?
Oh, I have wanted to throw my laptop across the room. You know, I kind of joke, as a parent, I've learned a lot of patience, so that's helped me.
Hmm.
I think if you're a tech, if you have any interest in tech or story, or any combination thereof, um, it's learning to troubleshoot. That's what these tools, it feels like a lot of kind of troubleshooting. Maybe that doesn't sound super creative, but once you get it, I cannot tell you, I've had more aha moments in the last year than I have in my entire life. And so it's worth the learning. And like Carl said, like and Nick as well, it's like this is a profession. It's a real profession. And if you dedicate the time, and you're gonna rip your hair out, but it is so worth it, at the end of the day, to see an idea come to life in such a big way. So yeah.
Thank you. I really appreciate you, Alicia, and LTX for hosting this conversation, and really grateful for everyone who joined. Alicia, did you have any final words for the group before we go?
The only thing that I will say is if we wanted to keep in contact with y'all, how would we be able to do that? Are there any LinkedIn's or anything
Oh
that
yeah.
we can use to keep in contact with you?